Hi, welcome guys. We are going to jump right into our video lecture on biodiversity as well as invasive species. We're going to talk about invasive species though in depth when we come back from spring break, but I did want to talk about biodiversity today. We discussed it just a little bit when we talked about our hydrosphere and the human impacts on the lithosphere, but we're really going to look at it today. So if you use your science vocab skills, we know that bio means life, and if we use our knowledge of the word diversity, we know that it means different. So biodiversity is the different species that we see in an ecosystem. As the slide says, the number and variety of species in an ecosystem is what biodiversity is. A healthier ecosystem, we have seen, includes a wide variety of species, or they have a high biodiversity. There are now an estimated 13 million species of living organisms on Earth, and we know as scientists discover the number is only growing larger, especially as we explore those deep parts of the ocean where we haven't explored before. We're finding all kinds of new and wonderful life. We have three levels of biodiversity, or three ways we distinguish biodiversity. We can have genetic biodiversity in a population, which is where our species are the same species, but they differ in the genetic traits that they have. For example, I might have, if you look at this picture right here of the voles, I might have a vole with really, really dark fur, and then a vole with really light fur, or any other space in between. I might have a vole that has really good eyesight. I might have a vole that has really bad eyesight. My vole might have a really long tail. It might have a really short tail. So this is the genetic diversity that we see in a population. If we were to think about humans for a second, this could be the genetic diversity that you display. Like, we know that some students are taller than other students. We also know that some students have dark colored hair or light colored eyes or dark colored eyes. We know that some students have, even if you think about, I don't know if you've ever known this before, but your ears attach. It's a genetic trait that you have. You can have attached earlobes or detached earlobes. We are not really sure why this happens or why there needs to be a difference, but there is. So that's genetic diversity. Another level, we could have species diversity. So if you take this vole example again, a good ecosystem, and generally this is what we talk about, a good ecosystem has a wide variety of species. They've got lots of plants, they've got lots of producers, they've got lots of fungi, they have maybe some mammals and some reptiles and amphibians in their ecosystem. So they've got a wide variety of life, so different species. But we also know that we can have ecosystem diversity, and this is where we've got a wide variety of ecosystems across a huge given area. So like our example here on the slide has a freshwater ecosystem in that river. We've also got what it looks like a forest with a dark undercover right here on this side where the sunlight doesn't really get through, so we've got a lot of bushes. And then right here maybe we have a forest with a little bit of a lighter canopy, so we've got other kinds of life down here in grass as well. So that is ecosystem diversity. Again, there are three levels, and oftentimes we think of this middle level, but don't forget we have the other levels as well. Factors that increase biodiversity: a diverse habitat, nutrients, rain, and temperature, so our abiotic factors, the ability of an animal to survive as well. So when we think about diverse habitats, this means that we have a lot of places for our animals to live. So maybe we have trees and rocks, and we can have holes in the soil, and we can have holes in our trees, and perhaps we have things like caves and dens, all kinds of stuff, or all kinds of places for these animals to live. The more nutrients we have, the more rain and the steadier temperatures that we have, generally we'll see more life. All of this is helping to increase the survival rate of your species. Factors that decrease biodiversity: environmental stress, limitation of nutrients or habitat, introduction of invasive species, and geological isolation. So if we think about environmental stress, that could be things that humans do to the environment that makes it harder for animals to live. Say we have cut down all the trees, and then there are no homes for the birds and squirrels and stuff, or we've built a house right where a forest once was. That's an environmental stress. Maybe we're polluting the forest or the rivers. That's an environmental stress. Limitation of nutrients or habitat. Again, if I'm cutting down trees, they don't have anything to live in anymore. They either are going to move or they're not going to survive. limitation of nutrients. Perhaps we're pulling a lot of the nutrients from the soil like we talked about in farming, so there's not a lot, so then my trees aren't growing or my plants aren't growing. And we know that our ecosystems are based upon those producers or the things that make the foods. If I don't have a lot of those, then my habitat isn't going to be very healthy, or my ecosystem's not going to be very healthy. Oftentimes you'll see as we study invasive species, when I introduce an invasive species into a system, that makes it really hard for the native species to survive. Invasive species are often, they're invasive, meaning that we put them where they're not normally found, like our fire ant is one of them. And oftentimes when we introduce a species to a system, they don't have any natural predators, meaning that nothing is eating them, and if nothing is eating them, the invasive species are going to eat the food of the native species, and they're going to harm the native species as well because they're eating more of whatever it is they eat. And then geographic isolation is also going to decrease biodiversity, so the smaller the area, the less biodiversity often we find. This is one of my favorite graphs ever to see because it shows that we are a biological hotspot. So all the red dots that you see on, like the darker the color gets, so it goes from green to yellow to red, the red spots are biological hotspots. That means that there's a lot of species there. And if you notice right here at the tip of North Carolina, almost where we live, like Brunswick County and New Hanover County right here, we have a biological hotspot. A lot of species live here, which is awesome. That means that when you guys go out and explore the nature around your house, you have a good chance of seeing a lot of different kinds of species. If you compare that to somewhere like where Miss Backover is from, right over here in Ohio, there aren't a lot of species there. So it's pretty cool that we have our own biological hotspot right near us. By the way, Wilmington is right there. Whoopsies. All right, so when we talk about biodiversity, we also have to talk about endangerment and threatened species and eventually extinct species. So it goes as a range. Endangered species, well, let's start with threatened species. I should have put this the other way on the slide. Threatened species are any species which are vulnerable to endangerment in the near future. And that's our first level. So threatened species are species that scientists have gone out and they see that the population of these species, it's getting smaller and smaller. They're not quite yet endangered because they haven't lost enough of their population, but it's like they've been put on our radar. We know we need to be careful. Endangered species is one step further than threatened species. That means that we've identified that a species or animal, whether it's an animal or a plant, is at serious risk of extinction. That means their population is really, really small now, and we're not sure if they're going to be able to make it. So threatened, we're putting it on the radar. Endangered, we're putting an exclamation mark by the radar, knowing that these are species that are seriously in danger of being extinct, and hopefully we know that extinction is when the species are no longer in the environment. Some of our species that are extinct already are things like the dodo bird, which is a pretty common one. This flightless bird right here, it's found in Madagascar. We've got the seaside sparrow is also the auk, and the passenger pigeon. These are extinct because of human activities. Generally, we overhunt them, or we have polluted their environment enough that they can no longer live there. These are examples of endangered species right here: the grizzly bear, the warbler, the Notalon cactus, the Florida manatee, and the African elephant. We know that they're endangered. That means their population is really, really small out in the wild. We might still find them, but it's small. Some of our other extinct species, a lot of our marine mammals, like the Steller sea cow, is extinct, and a lot of our marine mammals, like the manatee is a marine mammal, they're endangered usually. That's why in the United States you're not allowed to hunt them or harm them. It's illegal. So species extinction, some species are more prone or more likely to become extinct because of what they do or where they live. For example, if they take a really long time to reproduce, they're going to be more at risk for extinction because it takes a long time for them to have babies and reproduce their population. Another thing that makes it hard, or makes a species more prone to extinction, is if they are only found in one place, like our Venus flytraps. They're only found in Wilmington or a 50-mile radius of Wilmington naturally. So because they have what we call an endemic species, meaning that they're only found one place, they are at a large risk of becoming extinct. Other things as well, like if they're commercially valuable or we think we really like them, that also, like we like to hunt them, that also puts them at a greater risk for being extinct. Species extinction. So we have unfortunately killed quite a few of our species here. We've killed a lot of birds, a lot of plants, even more reptiles, even more mammals generally, because mammals have a very long reproduction rate, meaning it takes a while to develop an animal. It takes 9 months for a human baby to grow. It takes similarly a long time for a lot of mammals to grow. And then we've caused the extinction of a lot of fish as well. One reason to be concerned, so why do we care if these animals are becoming extinct? I've heard that question before, didn't like that question, but I heard it anyways. Many species have a practical value for us as humans. We use them as medicines or food. For example, I should have practiced my words. Quinine comes from a plant, and we use that to treat malaria, so we use it to treat diseases. Digitalis is used to treat heart disease. It comes from the foxglove plant. Taxol is a potential anti-cancer drug from the Pacific yew plant. So our species often have value to us for medical reasons or even food, so we want to make sure they stay around. Ways to remember species extinction. So hippo is going to be our adjective here. So when animals or plants experience habitat destruction, degradation, meaning we're destroying the habitat or like polluting it, or fragmentation, we're putting houses and stuff there, we're making it smaller and smaller, that will cause a species, that can cause a species to become extinct. Invasive species often are the other reason why we get extinctions, because like I said, their population is pretty unchecked, meaning that they grow like crazy. Growth of humans, so humans are only growing as far as population goes. With more humans comes more houses and the need for more agriculture fields we're taking up. Again, that goes back to habitat destruction and the degradation. More humans, more pollution. Pollution itself is one of them. The more pollution we put out into the environment, the more at-risk species are of extinction. And then over-harvesting, we know that we need to allow our populations of anything to bounce back before we harvest them. If we over-harvest them, we're going to only make it worse in the future because we won't have enough of them. So here is our Indian tiger. The purple is the range about 100 years ago, and then the red or darker purple is what we see today. The black rhino is an even sadder story. Here is the range in the 1700s. The range today is just a couple spots in Africa. African elephant is a less tragic story, but their range in about the 1600s is in the light purple. The dark purple is the range today. The Asian or Indian elephant, same thing. And it only gets sadder from there. So we really want to try and not lose the habitats for the animals. I know that we want to be environmentally conscious when we're building things. A lot of the animals or the extinctions that we see are due to habitat loss or overhunting, and most of them are directly due to the influence that humans have over the populations. So what I'm saying is they're preventable. So it's your job as environmentally able citizens to try and prevent that. All right, invasive species, one of my favorite things to talk about. They are an organism that is not native and has a negative effect on our economy, our environment, or our health. My example here is kudzu. Kudzu is one of my favorite examples of invasive species because you can see it outside of your window today, most likely. Kudzu is called the vine that ate the South. It was introduced in the southeastern, your place, of the United States to control erosion, and also because it looks so pretty. What they didn't know is it was going to take over the South. Literally, it climbs buildings, it climbs other trees, and when it climbs the other trees, it blocks out the light, killing a bunch of native species. If it climbs a building like it's doing in this picture right here, it's going to destroy the building. I've got a song about kudzu, but you'll have to wait until our lecture on invasive species to really learn about it because it's just that good. I feel like I need to hold off. Here's a couple other invasive species. Sometimes we intentionally introduce them into the environment to try and control things, like that wild boar that lives outside. Those were introduced to try and fight some of our other critters. A lot of the times we do it to try and control a native population, and we don't think that it's going to have strong effects. Other times we do it because it looks pretty and we want them. But many invasive species are unintentionally introduced. Let's see how long we have. All right, we'll finish this lecture in another video. Have a great day. This is part 1. Check out part 2 in a little bit.